Hello, Dolphins fans. Buckle up because we just got a triple dose of fantastic news before free agency even starts, and it's all setting Miami up for a big offseason. I'll give you all the details in a moment, but first make sure you hit that like button. But only do that if you agree that Chris Grier should have been fired. It makes no sense to me that he should stay with the Dolphins. We need a real GM. If possible, comment something like this: "Out with Grier, the Miami Dolphins need a change." Now let's get to the hot topics that are making the rounds on the web. First, we finally have all the details on Bradley Chubb's contract restructuring, and it's even better than expected. The move frees up a whopping $16.3 million in cap space for the Dolphins, which is a game changer for their offseason plans. Chubb, who was originally set to take a massive $29 million hit to the cap in 2025, has agreed to reduce his base salary to just $3 million, making it much easier for the team to keep him while still having room to address key roster needs. That's not all. He could still earn up to $19 million back through incentives. But the takeaway here is that Miami just bought itself a ton of flexibility. With Chubb's restructure and other recent moves, the Dolphins are now sitting at about $27 million in cap space, according to Over the Cap. That's a massive turnaround considering they were still over the cap just 2 weeks ago. But here's the thing. This front office isn't done yet. More potential restructures could be on the way, with names like Austin Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa, Zach Sealer, and Jordan Brooks all being candidates. If Miami plays this right, they could push their cap space north of $40 million, which would be a huge boost heading into free agency. And that brings us to another major piece of news. Jonathan Allen is now officially on the market. Just last week, we talked about how Miami could potentially trade for the former Pro Bowl defensive lineman, but now that's not even necessary. The Washington Commanders opted to outright release Allen rather than try to find a trade partner, and that changes everything. Before, the price of acquiring him included a $15.5 million salary and giving up draft capital. Now, he's available for nothing but money, and Miami can make a move right away.
So, should they? Allen has been one of the most durable defensive linemen in the league, and while his production dipped in 2023, he's still an elite pass rusher on the interior. Pairing him with Zach Sealer could create a formidable duo, especially since Miami ranked just 27th in the NFL in sacks per game last season. The concern is that his run defense has steadily declined over the past few seasons, which is something Miami has to consider. But for the right price, it's an easy yes. If Chris Grier and the Dolphins can land him for something like a 1-year, $8 million deal, or even a 2-year, $16 million contract, that's an absolute steal. Anything more than that might be pushing it. But if Miami is serious about shoring up its defensive line, they have to be at least in the conversation for Allen. Then, we have the final piece of news. The Dolphins have decided not to tender linebacker and special teams contributor Quinton Bell. This means Bell will now hit free agency, and while it's not a shocking move, it does signal Miami's priorities moving forward. Bell wasn't even expected to make the roster last season, but due to injuries, he ended up playing a much bigger role than anticipated. He finished with 27 tackles and a sack, showing flashes as a depth player, but Miami opted against paying him the $3.2 million tender that would have kept him around. This doesn't necessarily mean the Dolphins don't want him back. It just means they weren't willing to commit that kind of money. With Chubb, Phillips, and Ogba returning, along with potential draft additions, Miami likely feels confident in their edge depth moving forward. Still, if Bell is available at a lower price in free agency, don't be surprised if they circle back. So, Dolphins fans, this has already been a crazy start to the offseason, and we haven't even hit free agency yet. What do you think? Should Miami go all in on Jonathan Allen? Was restructuring Bradley Chubb the right move? And do you think the team should bring back Quinton Bell on a cheaper deal? Let's hear your takes in the comments. Now that we've broken down those 3 major developments, let's take a deeper dive into what they mean for the Miami Dolphins moving forward, because this is shaping up to be one of the most pivotal off-seasons in recent memory. First, let's circle back to Bradley Chubb's restructure and what it signals about the team's long-term plans. Chubb taking a massive pay cut to stay in Miami wasn't just a one-sided win for the Dolphins, it also suggests that he believes in what this team is building. Players don't just slash their salaries for fun. Chubb could have forced the team's hand, possibly leading to a post-June 1st release, but instead, he made a move that helps both his career and the team's cap situation. He's betting on himself, knowing that if he performs at a high level, he can still make his money back through incentives. More importantly, this move keeps Miami's pass rush intact while creating the financial flexibility needed to go out and improve other key positions. That brings us to Jonathan Allen. Miami now has the money to be active in free agency, and Allen should be at the top of their wish list. Defensive tackle is a clear area of need. The only true, proven starter under contract is Zach Sealer. Yes, Miami has players like Deshaun Hand and Benito Jones, but those aren't long-term answers. Allen, even with his slight decline, would immediately bolster the interior defensive line and provide a legitimate pass-rushing threat alongside Sealer. The big question is whether Miami wants to invest in a veteran free agent at defensive tackle or look to the draft to address the position. If the Dolphins want to take the free agency route, Allen is a fantastic fit. He's physical, disruptive, and brings veteran leadership to a team that could use more depth up front. But if they choose to go younger, the draft has some intriguing defensive tackle prospects that could provide an immediate impact. Either way, one thing is clear, Miami isn't done making moves. And let's not forget that Chris Grier is known for being aggressive. If he believes adding Allen will help the Dolphins take the next step, he'll make it happen. Miami already has one of the best secondaries in the NFL, with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard leading the way, but their defensive success starts up front. A stronger pass rush means fewer coverage breakdowns and more forced turnovers. Meanwhile, on the edge, the decision not to tender Quinton Bell makes sense when you look at the big picture. Miami has its core pass rushers in place with Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and Andrew Van Ginkel. The reality is that Bell was a depth piece, and while he played well when called upon, the Dolphins need to be strategic about how they allocate their cap space. That's why this move isn't about Bell's performance, it's about financial flexibility. Miami isn't going to spend $2 million on a depth linebacker when that money could be used elsewhere, whether that's adding a starting caliber offensive lineman, another defensive lineman, or a playmaker in the secondary. So where does this leave the Dolphins heading into free agency? With at least $27 million in cap space, and potentially more depending on further restructures, they're in a prime position to be major players in the market. But here's the challenge. They have multiple areas to address. Offensive line remains a priority, especially with uncertainty around Terron Armstead's long-term health. Miami's front office has to decide whether they're comfortable with their current group or if they need to make a splash signing to solidify protection for Tua Tagovailoa. On defense, linebacker is another area that needs attention. Jordan Brooks is a strong piece, but Miami could use another playmaker in the middle of the field. A veteran signing here would go a long way in improving their overall defensive balance. And let's not overlook the need for a backup quarterback. The Dolphins need insurance behind Tua, and while Mike White is still on the roster, Miami could explore other options to ensure they have a reliable second option under center. This is shaping up to be a critical offseason for Miami. With a strong core already in place, the right additions could push this team from playoff hopefuls to legitimate Super Bowl contenders. The restructuring of Chubb's contract is just the beginning. Expect more moves in the coming days as the Dolphins look to make the most of their newfound cap space. Now it's your turn, Dolphins fans. If you're running the team, what's your next move? Should Miami go all in on Jonathan Allen? Should they focus on bolstering the offensive line instead? Or is there another free agent out there that should be a top priority? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get the conversation going. Free agency is right around the corner, and things are just getting started. The Dolphins' offseason is off to a wild start, with Bradley Chubb's restructure freeing up $16.3 million and Jonathan Allen hitting the market. Miami has big decisions ahead. Should they invest in the defensive line or strengthen other positions? What would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments.